Hello, Canada Files viewers. This is Aidan Jonah, editor-in-chief of the Canada Files. I am here co-hosting episode 15 of Canada and Palestine, the War on Zionism, with Laith Marouf of Free Palestine TV. Laith, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you, Aidan.
All right, Laith. So we have, as always, so much to talk about. I think about the situation with this fraud of the ICC and so forth. Actually, there's interesting discussions. It was in Zionist media about apparently how Netanyahu had his justice minister try to get the Attorney General of Israel to actually do a fake prosecution slash investigation, so it would nullify the ICC's ability to prosecute him. You have the continuing escalations in the West Bank, and so much more. So, like, let's talk about the ongoing escalations in the West Bank first and foremost. How have things gone even further in the last week?
Well, Free Palestine TV right now has journalists reporting in Jenin, in Tulkarem, in the Bethlehem area, and in Hebron. Most of these were launched just in the last few days. And just looking at the content that's coming out of our journalists on the ground, the situation is much more severe than people can imagine. So this is not only just the corner of the north of the West Bank around Tul Kerim and Jenin, but also around Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and in the center, and Hebron al Khalil in the south. The attacks by Zionist settlers and the invasions by the Israeli military have just only increased. We look at the destruction in the area of Tul Karim and the refugee camps around it, like Nur Shams or Jenin. It is severe destruction. There's no more infrastructure, no more water, no more electricity in these locales. And tens of people have been martyred, killed, murdered by the Zionists, and tens more, if not hundreds more, that have been rounded up and kidnapped. So, although the major military actions of the Zionists have ended in around Jenin and Tulkarem, we see that the Zionists are now moving to other locations within the West Bank, namely around Khalil and around Bethlehem, to do the same that they did in the north of the West Bank. And as the Israeli military have now labeled their activities in the West Bank as a war front, this means that there's more military and more weapons being used in those locations, including bombardment by air from helicopters, drones, and jet fighters.
All right, Laith. So I'm also thinking about the horrific incident. Free Palestine TV referenced it. The Israel dropping these bunker buster USA made bombs over a tent city in southern Gaza. So, Laith, can you talk a little bit about the horrors that happened there?
Yeah, yes. This is the area of Mawasi in Khan Yunis. It's like a beach area that the Zionists declared as a safe zone and asked refugees, internally displaced, to go there. And in the middle of the night, the Zionists dropped five bunker buster bombs, 2,000-pound bombs on the tent city in Mawasi. At least 50 tents were disappeared with their inhabitants, buried in the ground or made into unrecognizable pieces. So this shows you the futility of the Zionist military strategy. They're clearly unable to defeat the Palestinian resistance, and the fact that they instead decide to massacre as many Palestinian civilians as possible. This is the major aim of the Zionists, because ultimately they don't have the ability to defeat the Palestinians resistance. Therefore, their strategic goal is genocide, ethnic cleansing of as many Palestinians as possible before this war ends. I would say one more thing, looking at how the US responded and the Western media responded by giving one more time cover to the Zionists, claiming that there was some Hamas leadership on the ground within the tents there. I think the Western journalists should be the first to be brought to justice and hung in public spaces when the trials for this war crimes and genocide in Gaza begin. They are the most responsible for the crimes of the Zionists, even more responsible than the politicians in the West, because without the media cover, the non-stop flow of propaganda justifications by the prostitutes that call themselves press workers in the West, this genocide would not be possible.
Or like, there's another element of Zionist criminality that I think should be talked about, and that is, as Free Palestine TV has covered, the use of Palestinians as, frankly, human shields. I'm thinking about Issam al-Damaj, and the other person is Barakat Dabaya. This was just in the last 7 to 10 days that you've reported, your outlet has reported on these incidents. So can you talk about this broader pattern? Because let's be real here, there's no doubt these can't be the only two people it's happened to.
Yes, yes, it's clearly a policy that the Zionists, whenever they go into an area they consider dangerous, they immediately kidnap Palestinian civilians and use them as a human shield. You were referring to one incident in Jenin where the Zionists used this youth to go into the natural cave under the Ansar Mosque. They forced him to carry a drone with him inside the natural cave and show them all the parts of it. And of course, if there was something dangerous there, this youth would have suffered because of it. And again, we saw them use, human shields in other parts of Jenin and in Tulkarem. Again, in situations where the Zionists are too scared, thinking that there is resistance to them or possible improvised explosive devices, that they are using Palestinians as human shields. And this is a widespread policy. If we are, as FBTV, as a small TV station, able to show you when, so much reports about human shields use in one locale like Jenin, then you could clearly expand that to the rest of the West Bank. And this situation is even worse in Gaza, and it's harder to record these testimonies because many of the Palestinians that are used as human shields in Gaza are assassinated at the end of their use. They're martyred and killed and buried, and nobody knows about them in Gaza.
All right, well, let's talk about the some of the resistance to this, because there is horrific victimhood, but there's also stout resistance. So let's talk about the Palestinian resistance itself. Can we talk about some of the successes, perhaps, they've been able to eke out in this last week or so?
Yes, in Gaza, there's been many ambushes set up for the Zionists and have succeeded. And this is, according to the Zionists themselves, they have admitted this. There is, high-ranking officers that have been liquidated by the resistance. There's many videos of the destruction of Israeli armored vehicles. And I would say the what the Israelis were trying to do with the Netzarim axis to create this buffer zone that separates the north of Gaza from the south of Gaza has become their Achilles heel. Now they are exposed. This is their supply line. This is where they're stationing their command and control. And this is becoming now easy targets for the resistance. And so the Zionists keep on widening this corridor that they in the Netzarim area, and it still doesn't help them. Similarly, in the corridor of the Philadelphia axis on the border with Egypt, that has become another death trap for the Zionists. They built it in order to supposedly give a buffer zone and protect themselves, and in fact, it's becoming the location that they are targeted the most and suffer the most casualties. Finally, I want to say about Hezbollah's response to the assassination of General Shukr 2 weeks ago. We right now, just in the last 24 hours, actually like 6 hours, there's now confirmation from Israeli media, from sources within the Israeli government that have been aired on Al Mayadeen and Israeli media, as well as a statement by the second in command of Hezbollah, who all said that the attack on the Glilot Israeli base just outside Tel Aviv, being where the Israeli military intelligence headquarters are and the Unit 8200 is stationed, that there is at least 22 Israeli soldiers and officers that were killed in the attack on Glilot, and that the whole head office of the 8200 unit has been leveled to the ground. Similarly, the command and control base just north of that, that was also attacked on that day. There's at least 12 Israeli soldiers dead that day. That the barracks of where the officers and soldiers are were actually hit and targeted. So we're talking about close to 40 Israeli soldiers and officers liquidated. And this is why now we know for sure, this is why the commanding officer of Unit 8200 resigned. It's because his unit is actually destroyed and many of his officers are dead.
All right, Laith. So I'm going to take things into Canada now. I think the big thing that started off recently is, of course, really the open front of JDL. It's open move into the public, very open move. You've seen on the University of Toronto campuses, you have Mayor Weinstein and other JDL fascists that are there, actually intimidating students. You had one organization calling itself, I believe it was J Force, that was also there. One of the Zionist groups patrolling on the campuses of U of T. You had the even National Council of Canadian Muslims. They actually were protesting publicly because the Kahanists, they had their flags. They had their flags openly in downtown Toronto. I'm looking at the photo that the NCCM used, and it's crazy because I was, a few months ago, I was there. I mean, that was where I'd walk by regularly a few months ago. Not in Canada anymore, but it's just you can see the mask, right? The mask. Well, I mean, I don't even care for the mask anymore. Or the mask is not a discussion. There is no mask, but it's just an escalation, right? It's an escalation. So Laith, with this whole push on the JDL and really just no consequences, no punishment, right? I mean, you've talked about it, right? You think the future is concentration camps for Arabs and Muslims and pro-Palestinians. I want to hear your thoughts on this whole disaster.
Yeah, I just want to say that Mayor Weinstein is a piece of garbage and is also a coward, a wuss. A friend of mine in Montreal years ago Mir Weinstein showed up with some of his thugs to an event that we were organizing, and a friend of mine, when attacked by Mir Weinstein and his thugs, punched Mir Weinstein in the face, one punch, and the guy was down on the street, knocked out, unconscious. Okay. And his thugs that he brought with him just ran away. Okay. And left him on the sidewalk. And so I say to our viewers that you have to have a backbone. These thugs are cowards. They are just like the Israeli army. In fact, they're probably wearing diapers when they come into UFT and or gather to harass Palestinian rights activists anywhere in Canada, because they are, definitely soiling their pants, scared of Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims, and anybody that stands with them. And I would say that it is time that our communities, take more bold steps. Number one, since now the JDL has set a precedent that they can walk into a university campus armed with Kevlar body vests, that also our community should arm itself and should create patrol units and protect our students on campus and protect our demonstrators wherever they are against the thuggery of the JDL or J Force or the police in Canada, who are collaborating with the elite and the imperialist objectives and colonialist objectives of the Zionist colony. People should be ready and they shouldn't be scared. What is good for the Zionist goose is good for the anti-Zionist gander, right? This is maybe our Canadian audience will understand this concept. If the politicians and the police allow the JDL and other Zionist thug groups to behave in such ways in public, then our community should take that as a precedent and follow suit. And I tell you, nobody should be scared of any Zionist thugs. These are more wussy and more cowardly than even the Zionist soldiers on the ground in Palestine.
For sure, and I think I'm on the same page that there needs to be a dramatic escalation in terms of the risks that are wanting to be taken. But I also think, Laith, you would know well, there's an internal liberalism that still does emanate large sections of the Palestine movement in Canada, right? So as much as me and you will talk about confronting the Zionists right now, that internal liberalism isn't being confronted. And so there are a lot of people I don't think are in a mental state, right, to confront the Zionists. So we're on the same page, but I think that's a point that does need to be raised, right? The liberal ideas are truly a cancer towards anti-colonial, political action. These two things cannot coexist.
Definitely, and I would say that the biggest fault why the Palestine movement is so liberal, the biggest fault falls on the quote unquote anarchist organizers in the country. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 20, when we started groups like Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights, these anarchists fought very hard to make sure that the radical Palestinian leadership is removed and that only docile Palestinian organizers will remain that could be controlled by these quote unquote anarchists. And this is the truth. They fought SPHR at every turn. Okay, this is the reason SPHR didn't become, institutionalized, because that's the reality. And what do we see, whenever these anarchists take over these spaces, is that they turn out to be more liberal than anything that you could imagine. They only will quote unquote do some damage to insignificant things. On the streets, they would go and have fights for no reason with the cops when they should be concentrating, for instance. These anarchists that call themselves anarchists should be the ones that go to take actions that could lead to them going to jail. But anyways, look, I just want to say this doesn't mean that the Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim communities are not also at fault. They are. There is, even within the Palestinian and Arab and Muslim communities, leaders of solidarity with Palestinian human rights that were radical, were fought at every turn. You know, I just want to bring out some memory that is almost buried right now in my head. After we shut down the piece of garbage, Benjamin Netanyahu, at Concordia University in 2002, September 9th, 2002. It just passed, by the way, the anniversary, the 22-year anniversary. Wow, time so passes so much, so fast. After we did that, the mayor of Montreal was so scared of us as activists. He, number one, didn't arrest anybody, but he went and outreached to the Muslim Council of Montreal for some reason. It was in the middle of Ramadan, and he called them in for a meeting. So the Muslim Council of Montreal called the leadership of SBHR for a meeting before, just around 4 o'clock in the morning, just before sunrise. It was crazy. They asked us what we want to bring in the meeting with the mayor, but they already had a list of things that they wanted to talk to with the mayor. None of those things that they wanted to talk to were about the students at Concordia University or what happened. What they were, their minds were busy with was, at the time, the mayor of Montreal wanted to open a red light district, and they were, trying to lobby the mayor not to have a red light district in Montreal. And their other target for their meeting was to have a parking lot for one of the mosques. And so they went to this meeting with the mayor. It wasn't Ramadan, as I said. It was a morning meeting, and they walked into the room, and he had put all this food for them on the table, right? So they're all fasting. The mayor didn't know or didn't care to know about Ramadan and people fasting. And here you have the docile Muslim Council of Montreal group. They didn't even say anything to the mayor. They just sat down there, didn't point out that he's stupid, he's anti-Muslim, he's uneducated, he's for putting the food in front of them. And they didn't even discuss the issue of the student rights at Concordia. And they walked out of that meeting and took a picture with the mayor, and he got what he wanted. He took a picture with the Muslims. So
Laith, I have one question for audience context. Was it Gerard Tremblay or Pierre Bourque who was the mayor at the
it
time?
was Gerard Tremblay.
Okay,
It was
thanks, Laith.
Tremblay.
Continue, please.
Yes, yes. So here you have, basically, imagine if the Jewish leadership or council in Montreal goes to a meeting with the mayor and he puts pork in front of them on the table. We know that the Jewish leadership would have taken advantage of that stupidity of the mayor and would have ran with it to all the media, saying the mayor was trying to feed them pork and he's anti-Jewish, or he has no knowledge of kosher laws. But these docile Muslim leaders in Montreal refused to take advantage of the stupidity of the mayor. They could have went out public and said this mayor is stupid, doesn't know anything about Islam, was trying to he put food in front of us on the table while we're fasting, and we want our students protected. They could have done that, but they didn't. So this is a sample of what is the leadership of the Arab and Muslim communities or the Palestinian communities in Canada.
All right, Laith. So, keeping on the Montreal front, we have an interesting one. I'm not sure how long we'll actually spend on it, but this case of an NDP federal candidate Craig Sauvé in the by-election riding federally of La Salle and Marad Verdun. Essentially, the meltdown came because there was a campaign image. It showed Sauvé in front of a Palestinian flag, and it said in French, "A vote for him is a vote to quote, is to quote, stop the genocide in Gaza." That was the extent of the thing. And then you had a full-scale media meltdown. You had the conservatives meltdown. But you interestingly didn't really have the liberals, or I believe the bloc either, say anything. And now the same by-election is also one that's been targeted by liberal Muslim and Arab staffers. We talked about this last time in support with well-off donors of the same groups. So it's a continuation of a degree of actual organizing in terms of threatening organizing, right? To genuinely inconvenience. So, Laith, I want to hear your thoughts on this latest uh, little freak out from the Zionists.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny to see the mayor of Hampstead there, Levy, make a statement condemning this election poster. Here's a man that flies the Israeli flag in his mayor's office, talking about the need for politicians to stick to local issues. But it is telling that both the bloc and the liberals didn't attack Craig Sauvé, because that shows you that actually the vast majority of people that live in the Verdun, South Montreal area, that includes my neighborhood, Point Saint Charles, this riding, it shows you that the vast majority of voters in this area are against this genocide. And there is a big Arab and Muslim and Black and Irish communities in this area. And we're not talking about Protestant Irish. We're talking about Catholic Irish, IRA supporting, in the old days kind of community. And this makes the Verdun Imard like area a very good example of kind of number one, multicultural integration in an area, and number two, the reality of what the Canadian public wants. So I think that given that I saw also what's his name, Jagmeet Singh, answering questions from the media, saying that he will not condemn Craig Sauvé and his campaign posters and so on. This also shows you that now there's some shift within the NDP as the election's getting closer, as the coalition with the Liberals is breaking down, that if the NDP actually wants to lead this country, it has a chance. And the issue is Palestine, that can differentiate it openly against the other options, and could win their seats. Craig Sauvé, I think, will be hopefully winning his seat if there's any democracy left in this country.
All right, Leif. So let's talk now around this arms export question, because Jolie said recently that the government had suspended 30 permits for arms sale to Israel, but then it talked about blocking a contract for Quebec made ammunition to come to the IDF through the United States, right? But there are some real questions about that, how exactly they would stop this transfer. And it seems, again, in typical liberal fashion, it's really iffy on, is this actually going to change anything, right? Because we both know the whole Palestine vote in Parliament in the spring was a farce. And that's usually the usual liberal trick, right? They implement the most tiniest of little changes around Palestine policy and then subvert, discuss, distract, right? So do you actually think this contract, right, of these Quebec ammunition, do you actually think it's going to get stopped from going to Israel?
No, no. It's going to be really hard for the liberals to stop this. Number one, I don't think they want to stop it, but there's something more important than all of these munitions. There's the issue of parts of the F-35s that are produced in Canada that are unique, that there is no other producer for them, these parts of the F-35 anywhere in the world. So I call on our viewers, those who really want to do something, to go and destroy the factory where these F-35 parts are being produced. This will make a direct difference on the ground in Palestine. It will also suspend the F-35 production globally, okay? And it will put at risk any F-35s that are up in the air that need exchanges to this part that is being produced in Canada. So our activists, our viewers should go for things like this that are, if Canada is not able to produce them, a whole chain of production across the empire collapses. Even if we shut down a few bullets being sent to the US, somebody else will produce those bullets, but nobody else can produce the replacements for the F-35 components that are produced in Canada. And again, one more time, in general, we shouldn't be waiting for politicians that have lived all their careers as sock puppets to donors, contributors, and Zionists in general. So we should be taking the lead. The citizens of Canada should take the lead and force the politicians to follow in that lead.
All right, Laith. So the last thing I want to bring up is the case of protesters in Toronto. They were protesting a United Jewish Appeal event where you had Barry Weiss, the rabid Zionist genocide lover, so-called journalist. Uh, she was there, and it was at Meridian Hall, and you actually had Toronto police drag female protesters and other protesters at this event. It was very, very nasty police treatment of the protesters. And then we also saw where protesters went down to 51 Division in Toronto, and they also got brutalized themselves. So you can just see there is still flickers of resistance, right? And you see how brutal the state is to those flickers.
Yeah, and we go back to the point of the protesters not providing security for themselves. I think it's, way beyond at this point to go to a demonstration for Palestine and the way that people are still doing it after a year is to expect to be beaten, humiliated, harassed, and treated in undignified ways and arrested and charged all unjustly. This is what you should be expecting. And thus, it's very important to right now create security teams that are ready to defend the demonstrators, protect them from the abuse of the police and the politicians that order them. I don't think the police of Toronto would have dared attack armed and body, with helmets and body armor teams that are protecting these demonstrators. It would have ended up with somebody being shot and killed if that happens. And maybe that's what what's is needed for things to stop right now, that the police need to be taught a lesson, just like we taught them a lesson on September 9th in 2002, when we fought them back, when we beat them back, when they tried to remove us from Concordia University. And that gave us 20 years of the police in Montreal not daring to touch any Palestinian demonstrator across the whole city. Another lesson should be taught to the police across the country in Canada. And maybe then they'll, stop listening to the politicians that put their lives at risk.
Okay, Laith. Well, I think I'm gonna leave the episode there. Laith, now, is there anything else about the work of Free Palestine TV you'd want to mention before we end off?
Yes, as I was saying before, we're launching daily reports we already have from South Lebanon and from Jenin. We're doing now Tul Karim, Beit Lahem, and the Hebron area. We also have two more shows other than Prisoners of War and Wartime Cafe that are in the works. They're going to be groundwork breaking shows that nobody has something offered like them. I'll keep that as a surprise. But I also want to note that our social media channels are now under huge attack by the Zionists doing reporting all the time. We've got a few videos, one episode of Prisoners of War, and another episode of the Wartime Cafe removed on YouTube. We had our Instagram channel banned for 24 hours, and it was let back on right now. I don't know. They didn't even tell us why we were being banned. So I encourage people to visit our website, freepalestine.video. Please donate, please subscribe. We're trying to increase and double and triple and quadruple the content and bring you facts from the ground, as well as opinions and voices of leadership here in the region that you've never heard before.
All right, Laith. Well, Canada's audience, this is now the end of episode 15 of Canada and Palestine, the War on Zionism. Now, of course, if you appreciate the analysis that comes in these episodes, please do consider setting up a monthly or annual donation to the Canada Files and Free Palestine TV. And Laith, thanks for co-hosting as always.
Thank you for having me. See you soon, man.
See you soon. We'll see you guys again next week. Goodbye.